Hey friends, today I am going to be sharing about chronic inflammatory response syndrome, something that is very near and dear to me because it is something that I suffer from, and also 1 in 4 of you out there, so across the whole population, have the genes and you're predisposed to getting this condition. So I also teamed up with my friend Aviva, who is a veteran with this disease too, and she has some totally different tips than I do, so she's also sharing her story and her tips, so I will link her video down below. She is such a doll, such a sweetheart. She's one of my real life friends too, so we met on YouTube. So chronic inflammatory response syndrome is the full technical name for what I and a lot of other sufferers refer to as mold illness. Now before you check out, because you don't really care about mold, I want you to know that 1 in 4 people in the entire population carries the gene for this disease. So that is why I wanted to make this video, to spread awareness about it, and because if you suffer from like a weird health condition and you have had like a billion diagnoses or no one can diagnose you, you might want to listen up because it could be something that you want to consider having checked out. I want to share with you the common symptoms of biotoxin illness. So what I mean when I say that 1 in 4 people have the genetic traits that predispose them to this condition is, I mean that 1 in 4 people may have this condition or it may never be triggered. There has to be 2 things other than the genetic component to trigger chronic inflammatory response syndrome, and that is 1, sufficient exposure to biotoxins, and 2, a triggering event. So that could be a big illness, something like Lyme disease. It could be just a really horrible time in your life that was really stressful. It could be an exposure to like some terrible chemicals, for instance. It could be a number of things, but you have to have had exposure and you have to have had a trigger. I had a lot of exposure growing up. I had lived in water damaged buildings. I lived in the South for a little bit in my brand new school. I know I had a mold problem. We also had found mold in our windows and we're getting that taken care of. And during that time, we also had our carpets cleaned and they majorly messed up and released some sort of chemical bomb that marinated with the mold in our windows. And we had to get rid of all of our stuff and we had to move. Mold isn't the only culprit. So mold illness is caused by exposure to biotoxins. Biotoxins are toxins created by living things. So that could be a bacteria. It could be toxins created from yourself. Those are called endotoxins. By metabolism, we create waste, etc. Could be mold. Mold is the biggest culprit. Mold and mycotoxins. Mycotoxins are the toxins that mold produces, and even dead mold can continue to produce those toxins. There's also fungal toxins, there's microbial VOCs, but most commonly we're going to be talking about mycotoxins, and those are found in water damaged buildings. It's been estimated that 85% of buildings have had water damage and 50% may be currently water damaged. And after water damage, it only takes mold 24 hours to grow. So if you have a leak in your home or your workplace, really be vigilant about getting it cleaned up and dried immediately. That might mean you cut out the drywall, it might mean that you put a fan up, whatever it is, you have to stop the leak. You have to get that water damaged part out of the building. Usually, if a person without this gene, a regular normal person, is exposed to large numbers of biotoxins, they're still probably going to get sick. Maybe not, but most likely. And then their bodies recognize biotoxins as toxins and their bodies get rid of them, usually all on their own. People who have chronic inflammatory response syndrome don't do that. Their bodies don't recognize those as toxins, and so those toxins stay in their bodies. So usually our bodies store toxins in our fat cells, and that is why we really need to work to detoxify if we are one of these people. So as you guys know, I have chronic inflammatory response syndrome. I'm just gonna call it mold illness from here on out because it's very, very long. So I have mold illness. You guys know that I have Lyme disease, and from those two things, I have a number of conditions that are sort of secondary, like chronic migraine. I have adrenal fatigue, I have hypothyroid, and on occasion I do have POTS. So looking back, it was kind of obvious that I had a problem with mold. For instance, when I would go in old buildings that my mom would drive me to a craft show for, I would feel really like just weird, like dizzy, or I just felt weird in there. And then in college, I tried to live in an old building, and there was visible like mold bubbling out under the paint, and I got, after just a few nights in there, I got sores in my mouth and like down my throat from living there. So I always knew that I should stay away from moldy places, like places that were obviously moldy. I didn't know it had anything to do with genetics or a particular disease. I just thought I was like allergic to mold. I've already talked about my first big triggering event. I then, after that event, I still was pretty normal. I still felt normal all the time. I've had migraines since I was 15, so I still had migraines. I did notice my mom was always very sensitive to scents. So we were a very low scented household. If we wanted to wear perfume, we had to put it on outside and couldn't come back in the house with it. We couldn't use nail polish in the house, etc. What I did notice is that I developed environmental allergies, seasonal allergies. I'd never been allergic to nature a day in my life, and after that first trigger, I was allergic to trees. I was allergic to grass. Shortly thereafter, I got married and moved into a home that my husband had purchased before I came into his life. It was brand new when he bought it, so it was about a year old when I moved in, and it was new construction, cheap new construction. And if you guys don't know about construction and how toxic it is, new construction releases VOCs and other harmful chemicals in the air constantly, from the carpet to the sealant to the paint to the drywall to the varnishes to the cabinets to every single thing in there releases chemicals. So that was my second trigger. Took down my health for real. If you guys want to hear more about that experience and more about my health story in general, I will link a video that I did on that down below, but I really wanted to make this one targeted on the mold illness, how you know if you have it and what you can do about it. So now living in a safe home is the best thing for me. My body has really been enjoying that. The other ways that mold affects me in my day-to-day life, I can smell it on somebody's clothing. Even if I can't smell it, I can tell if they live in a moldy house because I'll start reacting to their clothing, and I can do this from feet away. It doesn't have to be real close to me. If I go in a store that has mold in it and I can tell, I have to leave immediately, don't even chance it. But the biggest problems for me are finding a safe place to work, because so many buildings are water damaged, 85%. And the other thing that's very hard for me is we really enjoy traveling, and finding a safe place to stay is really difficult, especially not being able to go there beforehand and check it out. So there is a series of protocols that I do to find a safe hotel or Airbnb. If you guys are interested in that, maybe I can do a blog post about it. I think I actually have it typed up from an old blog that I had before that I never told anybody about. So if you're interested in that, please let me know. And basically, if I encounter any mold during the day, when I'm able to come back home, I wash my clothes immediately in Thieves. I put a couple of drops of Thieves in my laundry, and I shower immediately. If it for some reason would get in my car, or somebody visited my home, something like that, I do also diffuse Thieves in the air. So in order to recover from mold illness, there are two big things that you have to do. One, you have to live in a place without mold. You need to get out of that situation. Same thing with work. If you work in a moldy building, if you're just continuing to expose yourself, you will never get better. Bottom line, you'll never get better. You have to get out. Remediation may not be enough. There are so many bad places that will remediate your home of mold. You can't just dump bleach on it. You cannot just kill mold, because dead mold will still release spores. And even if you remediate it incorrectly and you don't seal off that area, you can still release spores into the rest of your home or the rest of your building. So if you're going to remediate, you have to find a reputable place that really knows what they're doing. So until you can get out, and once you have gotten out, you are going to have to go through the process of taking toxin binders that bind to those biotoxins and help escort them out of your body, since your body doesn't do it on its own. So how I treat myself now with my own self and my doctor's knowledge, I live in a safe place, I work in a safe place, I take very frequent far infrared saunas, and I use toxin binders on a daily basis. If I have a very bad exposure, I take Colested, that is a prescription drug, and it is not without side effects, so I do not use that one on a daily basis, but I choose healthy, safe, natural toxin binders like bentonite clay. I take a supplement called Bind, which is a bunch of binders put together, but activated charcoal is probably the best known binder. So if you are concerned that you might have mold illness or know somebody who does, I will list some resources down below, like Dr. Richie Shoemaker, who is the one who sort of pioneered this effort. His website is called survivingmold.com. The book you need to read is called Mold Warriors. It gives you all of the testing information of how to get tested to see if you have this gene, to see if it's affecting you, and also a list of doctors who are able to treat this, because the average Western medical doctor doesn't know about mold illness. The average naturopath doesn't even know about mold illness or how to treat it correctly. You really need to find a doctor who understands it and knows how to help you. So to recap, if you're worried, even if you're not worried, one, avoid mold like the plague. An air filter enough is not enough to help you if you live in a moldy environment. It's not. An air filter can't do anything amazing for mold. Number 2, toxin binders. Number 3, protect your environment. And to prevent mold, the best way to do that is, of course, if there's any leaks, clean it up immediately. Don't let it stay wet. Dry it off immediately. Cut out the drywall if you have to. And also use a dehumidifier. Also diffuse thieves in your home. Make sure to clean out spaces that may be prone to growing mildew or must or mold, because mold, my friends, is no joke. I still have some symptoms. I am still extremely sensitive. If there's something with mold around me, I will react immediately. However, I don't have the horrible symptoms that I was having day in and day out. Even though I lived in a mold-free environment, I wasn't able to get those toxins out of my body. And so I was still having a problem. So just removing yourself from the situation is extremely crucial to getting better, but it's not enough. So I would highly encourage you guys to check it out. Check out the Surviving Mold website. Just, if you think that this could be a problem for you, follow through with it, because it is a huge deal and you'll feel so much better if you are able to get the mold out of your life. Also, make sure that you check out my friend Aviva's video. She's gonna be sharing her story with mold. She's at a very different place in hers than I am with mine, and she has some different tips that I didn't even know about. So I will link that down below too. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.